So guys, yesterday I asked you guys if you could get this video I posted yesterday to 1,000 likes within 24 hours. And guys, we got so close. But big respect to everybody that smashed that like button. The reason why I asked is over the last 3 or so years, I've been shadow banned. So I was just wanting to get back on it. And I need your guys' help essentially. So anytime I release a video, if you can, really appreciate if you can smash that like button, you know, try and get at least 1,000 likes within 24 hours, then hopefully it can pick up on the algorithms and others can view as well. But again, everyone that helped out yesterday, big respect to each and every one of yous. In this next news story, absolute madness. So an international crime gang smuggled billions of pounds worth of drugs into the country, hidden in fruits and vegetables, in the biggest plot ever uncovered by the UK police. The massive operation saw up to £7 billion worth of Class A drugs brought into the country in an unprecedented criminal conspiracy executed by a highly organised and professional outfit. Members of the gang were brought to justice for their part in the staggering crime following what is thought to have been the longest criminal trial in British legal history, which ran at Manchester Crown Court for almost 2 years. Police seized 450 kilos of heroin and coke and more than 2 tons of cannabis in lorries containing fruit and vegetables, with a total street value of around £40 million. But prosecutors said the seizures were just a tip of the iceberg, of an extremely large iceberg, I must say. In reality, the gang were responsible for at least £2 billion worth of drugs being imported, or as much as £7 billion, offering a transport service for the British criminal underworld. It was the product of a complex criminal network in which arrangements were made for drugs hidden in cover loads before being driven to the UK in lorries from the Netherlands. Prosecutors said the shipments, which were then sent on to organised crime gangs up and down the country, were hidden in fresh produce because it was impossible for customs to check every load. The shipments were made using bogus companies with names including Pot Fresh, Blackpool Fruit, Veg and Euro Produce. Innocent haulage companies would then unwittingly transport the narcotics following contact with these bogus firms. The gang's ringleader Paul Green was the chief organiser of the shipments alongside his fellow criminals who became experts in importing the drug. The gang later formed an alliance with a Dutch crime gang to work together on drug importations. Barbara Ringbout and Johannes Vesters were the leading figures on the continent. Green, who drove expensive cars and had expensive watches, portrayed himself as a successful company director, but he had little or no legitimate income. He was referred to as the big fella by some of his fellow criminals. Steve Martin from Bolton was Green's right-hand man and finance guy, operating bank accounts and front companies. A third principal organiser was Mohammed Ovais from Levenshulme, who was involved in the arrangement of front companies. Green has now been jailed for a staggering 32 years. Martin and Ovais were jailed for 28 and 27 years, respectively. The full details of the case can now be published for the first time after reporting restrictions were lifted. Judge Paul Newton, who sentenced the crime gang in May, said the importations were on an unprecedented scale. He said, "Your business model might have been taken from Amazon. You were the Amazon of the drug world. That's how big you guys were." He said the drugs had supplied organised crime groups the length and breadth of the country. He said what you were actually distributing was addiction, misery, social degradation, and in some cases death. So it marked the end of a mammoth Crown Court case which originally began in June 2022 and is thought to have become the longest running criminal trial in British legal history. The jury spent 141 hours and 21 minutes deliberating, representing about a month in court sitting hours. Judge said, "I hope you have found readjusting to life outside of the courtroom easy." And I'm sure it hasn't been easy, but I hope you are managing that process. So the defendants to be sentenced were Green, as I said, he got 32 years in prison after being found guilty of 3 counts of conspiracy to import Class A and 4 counts of conspiracy to import Class B. Oliver Penter, who's 41 from Stockport, was sentenced to 24 years in prison after he was found guilty of 1 count of conspiracy to import Class A and 1 count of conspiracy to import Class B. Steve Martin, who's 52, and Mohammed Ovais, who's 46, were both found guilty of 2 counts of conspiracy to import Class A and Class B drugs. Martin got 28, Ovais got 27. Iftikhar Hussain from Leeds, he was jailed for 4 years for assisting the activities of an organised crime group. You got Russell Leonard from Merseyside, who's found guilty of 2 counts of conspiracy to import Class A and 1 count Class B, was sentenced to 24 years. Alan Cumming from Merseyside, he was sentenced to 21 years in prison again for importing Class A and Class B. You got Barbara Rigenbout and Johannes Vestas, again, Class A and Class B importation, and Rigenbout was sentenced to 18 years and Vestas got 20 years. After the hearing, Rob Jones, the NCA Director General of Operations, said without criminals like these, there would be no young teenagers dealing drugs through county lines. There would be no turf war murders or innocent members of the public killed in the crossfire. Paul Green and his accomplices enabled and helped deliver this kind of suffering and misery in communities across the country. They were the crucial link in moving drugs from source countries abroad all the way to UK towns and cities where lives were wrecked by them. They thought they could hide behind a web of front companies, false personas, and encrypted communications. They were wrong. NCA investigators worked tirelessly to identify this international organised crime group involved in industrial-scale drug trafficking. Our officers' meticulous work unmasked them and evidenced the scale of harm they were causing to UK communities. The team brought together multiple sources of evidence from overseas partners, seizures at ports, and analysis of travel which had dismantled a group operating at the highest levels of organised crime. Richard Harrison, the NCA Regional Head of Investigation, said the offenders smuggled huge quantities of drugs into the UK. They had absolutely no ethics. They stooped incredibly low and left a trail of devastation for entirely innocent people by cloning businesses and stealing identities. Tackling the drugs threat is a top priority for the agency, and this investigation shows the lengths we will go in order to protect the public. We worked with a wide array of partners at home and abroad, all of whom provided crucial assistance in helping us put these criminals behind bars. Absolute madness, guys. £7 billion worth of drugs, and this trial took over 2 years to go through its courses. And I said in one of the previous videos just the other day that in this drugs game, no one is going to be successful. Look, even this proves that point. These guys, they were smashing it. Forget even on like local, national, international. These guys are fucking running the world, it seems, with this £7 billion. And even these guys, the way that they tried to, ship the product in and, took every single action to evade justice, even they got caught. So it's always going to end up with either a life being taken or getting locked up in prison, and all that money you've made, all that money you've acquired, it'll all be taken away as well. So it's not really worth it. But another point I wanted to touch on, which is, okay, that's what we're talking about with regards to in our country, but what's the impacts of having drugs shipped over? So let's go with coke. So it's probably it is actually the second most popular drug in this country, but as we know, getting it over is a bloody mare. Now, it's believed that with every gram of coke snorted in the UK, an innocent civilian in Colombia has to pay for it with their life. So that's because in recent decades, a large proportion of the UK's coke supply has originated from Colombia, where civil war rages and competing gangs use coke profits to fund their fighting. In recent years, Mexico's also had a share of bloody drug wars, while Peru and Bolivia are upping their production. And in these bloody turf wars, it's the innocent civilians that get caught up. Nowadays, like, you've got a lot of people who will buy fair trade coffee and they're aware of their lifestyle choices that impact others. But when it comes to snorting a quick line, they'd rather turn a blind eye to the horrible violence and conflict that these drugs causes. So best to just stay away from drugs. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.